Some rules are written to protect people. But every once in a while, one act of kindness breaks a rule for all the right reasons. On a cold autumn night, a young nurse made a choice that could have cost her career. She stayed beside a dying stranger when hospital policy told her to walk away. By sunrise, the entire hospital understood why her decision would never be forgotten. What happened that night wasn't about money, fame, or recognition. It was about a lonely man, a frightened heart, and 10 unforgettable hours that proved kindness can become the greatest miracle of all. Stay with us until the very end, because this true-to-life style story might change the way you see the people around you forever. Before we begin, if stories that restore your faith in humanity mean something to you, please like this video, subscribe to Heartline Stories, and tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced kindness from a complete stranger? Your story may inspire someone else today. Emily Carter had worked the night shift at St. Matthew's Hospital in Chicago for nearly 5 years. Most people believed the night shift was quiet, but Emily knew better. Nights were filled with silent tears, whispered prayers, emergency alarms, and lonely patients who often needed comfort more than medicine. She loved being a nurse because her late mother had once told her, "People may forget what medicine you gave them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel." Emily carried those words into every room she entered. Near midnight, an ambulance arrived with an elderly man named Walter Brooks. He was 86 years old. He had advanced heart failure, and the paramedics quietly explained that there was very little hope. Walter wasn't unconscious. He was awake. He looked around the emergency room with frightened eyes and asked the same question over and over. "Did my daughter come?" No one answered. The hospital staff searched the records. They called every emergency contact listed on his file. One number had been disconnected. Another went straight to voicemail. The last relative had moved out of state years earlier. Walter was completely alone. Emily gently squeezed his hand. "We're here with you." He smiled weakly. "I don't want to die alone." Those words stayed in Emily's heart. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, Walter was moved into a quiet room. The doctor explained that he probably wouldn't survive until morning. Hospital policy was clear. Nurses had strict schedules. Each patient could only receive a limited amount of bedside time unless there was a medical emergency. Emily still had 6 other patients who needed medication and monitoring. She finished every task as quickly and carefully as she could. Every time she passed Walter's room, she noticed him staring at the ceiling. Still waiting. Still hoping. At 4 in the morning, Emily looked at the schedule. Her shift would end in less than an hour. Another nurse would take over. She stood outside Walter's room, thinking about the rules. Then she remembered her mother's words. She quietly walked inside. Walter smiled. "I knew you'd come back." Emily pulled up a chair beside his bed. "I'm not going anywhere for a little while." Walter laughed softly. "You know. I used to think hospitals were scary places." "Why?" "Because everyone is always in a hurry." Emily smiled. "We're not all in a hurry." For the next hour, Walter shared pieces of his life. He had been a high school history teacher for 38 years. He loved baseball. He met his wife during a neighborhood picnic when they were only 20 years old. After she passed away, life became very quiet. His daughter had stopped speaking to him nearly 15 years earlier after a family disagreement neither of them ever found the courage to fix. "I kept thinking I'd have more time," Walter whispered. Emily felt tears forming. So did she. Silence filled the room. Then Walter reached into the drawer beside his bed. "There are letters." Emily opened the drawer. Inside were dozens of unopened birthday cards. Christmas cards. Graduation announcements. Every year Walter had written to his daughter. Every year he was too afraid to mail them. "I didn't know how to apologize." Emily looked at him. "It's never too late." Walter smiled sadly. "I think it might be." Emily checked the clock. 5:30. Her shift had officially ended. Another nurse knocked gently. "Emily, you're off now." Emily looked back at Walter. He was breathing harder. She quietly answered, "I'll stay a little longer." Technically, she wasn't supposed to. Her supervisor noticed. "Emily, we appreciate your compassion, but you're off the clock." "I know. You need your rest." Emily nodded. "I do." Then she looked back at Walter. "But he needs someone more." The supervisor didn't argue. She simply walked away. The sun slowly began rising beyond the hospital windows. Golden light filled the room. Walter stared outside. "I always loved sunrises." Emily held his hand. "So did my mother." Walter smiled. "Then maybe she'll tell my wife I'm finally coming home." Emily couldn't hold back her tears anymore. At that moment, Walter asked one final favor. "Would you read one of the letters?" Emily carefully opened the oldest envelope. It began with just 4 words. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." As Emily read, Walter quietly closed his eyes. His breathing slowed. His face became peaceful. Before the letter ended, Walter was gone. Emily remained beside him in complete silence. No alarms. No fear. Only peace. Later that morning, the hospital administrator requested to see Emily. She worried she was about to be disciplined for staying beyond her shift. Instead, the administrator stood and handed her a small envelope. A police officer had arrived shortly after Walter's passing. While searching public records, investigators had finally located Walter's daughter. She had been driving toward the hospital all night after receiving the voicemail. Traffic and distance kept her from arriving in time. But before Walter died, Emily had convinced him to let the hospital send one final message. His daughter received it just before sunrise. The administrator smiled. "She asked us to give this to you." Emily opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "You gave my father something I can never repay. Because you stayed, he didn't leave this world believing he was forgotten. You didn't just comfort him, you healed a part of my heart too. Thank you for loving my father when I couldn't." Emily cried. The hospital board later reviewed everything that happened that night. Instead of punishing her for staying beyond policy, they changed the policy itself. From that day forward, every terminally ill patient at St. Matthew's Hospital could request a volunteer companion so that no one would spend their final hours alone. The new program became known as Walter's Promise. Years later, new nurses still heard the story during orientation. Not because Emily had broken a rule, but because she reminded everyone that rules should never replace compassion. Kindness doesn't always cure illness. It doesn't stop time. It doesn't erase regret. But kindness can give someone peace. Sometimes that's the greatest gift another human being can ever receive. If this story touched your heart, remember that the smallest act of compassion can become someone's brightest memory. Hold a hand. Make a phone call. Forgive someone while there's still time. Because the world doesn't always remember the people who followed every rule, but it never forgets the people who chose kindness when it mattered most.